weird sitting down because I've stood the whole day. And we're standing up on this stage. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us for our panel on women in modern sword fighting. Really kind of the dream of this panel was to bring together different women that participate in different hobbies of sword fighting, and to kind of give a here's what we do, here's why we like what we do, here's kind of the what's available in the DFW area. And the ultimate, my personal goal is to attract more women into one of these groups, because we absolutely love having more diversity. So we hope we can kind of give you a rundown of sort of what we do, what we like, and everything else. So today on my panel, which I kind of like asked FateCon, they said, you can do whatever you want. I said, well, I want to talk about women in sword fighting, and they said, yes. So I'm very, very honored today to be joined with Paige, who is a instructor at the HEMA school. She's going to give you all the rundown on it and tell you about it.
Yeah, so I'm a instructor over at Dallas School of Historical Fencing. It's over in Irving, Texas, so it's about 20-30 minutes away from here. We focus on the early German tradition in HEMA. Historical European Martial Arts is kind of what it stands for. So you have multiple different traditions, but we focus strictly pretty much on the German tradition. So you're looking at probably between 13 and 1500s. This is kind of, at least from our sport, what the modern Olympic fencing that you see today kind of comes from. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We do German longsword.
So also joining us today is Elise, and Elise is a absolutely badass. She's the most terrifying one of us up here, I think.
So I participate in, we call it BUHURT, but American people don't like to say BUHURT. So often we just call it full contact armored combat. So that's a focus on medieval style steel armor. So I guess you would think of it kind of like a full plate armor from the late Middle Ages, so the 1300s to the late 15th century. And we use blunted steel weapons, and I guess it's a little bit unique in that there's a big focus on a team sport, so it mimics a tournament style combat. So there are two different teams, and you can use any means necessary kind of to get the other combatants on the ground. So it's pretty fun, and I think less of a focus on technique and more on whatever works for you, kind of.
Yeah, the strength class.
The strength class,
Yeah,
the barbarian class, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, awesome. So my name is Loretta, and in the Society for Creative Anachronism is what is my main hobby and what I'm kind of going to talk about mostly today, but I've also participated in a lightsaber organized fighting, and I've also have participated in a foam fighting game called Amp-Guard, which is nationwide. But primarily what I do nowadays is Society for Creative Anachronism, which we have three different types of fighting. So we have what we can call heavy fighting, which you wear your armor and then you wear a helmet. It's not full contact like Elise's sport. We don't allow grappling or punching or kicking or shield punching or anything of that nature. And we fight with rattan weapons, not steel weapons. And the reason for that is because rattan, when it breaks, it doesn't splinter and won't get all in your eyes. But it's also not steel to bash your brain out with, right? The other two sports are rapier, which is a steel fighting, but it is very akin to Olympic fencing, except for you're not on a strip. You can move around. It is not as cool historical as HEMA, but we have a good time with it. And then the third sport is called cut and thrust, which is kind of a mix of the two. So you're in your rapier gear with more joint protection, and you can it's more like saber fencing. So that's kind of what we do over in those sports. I think, what was the next part on our, she's keeping me honest here.
Yeah, so we were talking about how long we've been fighting and kind of how we got started.
Yeah, so how did you get started? How long have you been fighting?
Yeah, so this is my 5th year doing HEMA. This was the first kind of combat sport that I did. Really any sport that I did, to be honest. I was more the artsy type growing up. But I got into HEMA through my boyfriend, actually, my partner. We both run the school together now, but the founder is kind of complicated how we kind of came into things, but long story short, the founder couldn't run the school anymore. We kind of came into the school. We started doing it together 5 years ago. We've just kind of continued to do it. Highly recommend being able to beat up your partner. It's great. Like, it just
Can confirm.
it is like it really gets it out. You really settle your differences. And speaking of differences, I did want to kind of touch on this a little bit because I didn't get the chance to earlier. But something different between BUHURT and HEMA, while both of them are like kind of rooted in historical practices. We talked about that kind of barbarian class versus like a dex class. HEMA's pretty much exclusively going to be duels, unless you're just kind of messing around and having fun. But it's going to be exclusively dueling each other as opposed to kind of that group fighting. Yeah, cool. Okay. So how about you? How did you kind of get started with BUHURT and everything?
Well, so I had a friend who sent me, they were like, hey, I see a Facebook event. Someplace is doing like an open house and we're gonna go check it out. You wanna come? And I was like, that's great. And they bailed at the last second. And then I was like, fine, I'll go anyways. So I went by myself and I was like, wow, these guys do like, they put on armor and fight. That's kind of crazy. I haven't fought anyone since I was in middle school taking Taekwondo at the YWCA. And I have not done anything the 10 years after that. So I went in, I put armor on, and I was like, oh my gosh. That was in January 2020. So we're in for a long dry spell where not a lot of stuff happened. But I've been fighting a lot since then. I will say that it's just like, what else was I supposed to cover here? How long I have been fighting and how I got started. Well, that's it. That's how I got started.
Yeah. You did it. You did it.
And so you've been fighting for 4 years now.
Yeah, 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, it's been. It feels like it's kind of like it's like that's when the most interesting part of my life started. I guess.
Things kind of went boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 10 out of 10 would recommend starting to
Yes.
fight everybody that you meet.
I would agree with that. So I got started, I started fighting 20 years ago, but I started in, like I said, a foam fighting game. And I showed up actually to do archery, not to fight, because I didn't want to fight. I've never done anything fighting related before. I was an ice skater in sports, so very one person thing. And so I got into that, really enjoyed it, ended up, getting into fighting, and there were almost no women fighting in tournaments, so I was one of the few doing that. And so from there, I found the SCA through my husband. He wanted to go try it out, and so I said, sure, let's go. I went. It wasn't my thing, actually, to start off with. And then it kind of grew on me, and then I started doing rapier. And since then, I've recruited a lot of really awesome people into rapier, like Elizabeth over there. And then I tried heavy. I couldn't do it because of some physical issues, and so I've since resolved those, and I've been doing heavy fighting since I got back out of COVID. I started training during COVID, and when we came out of it, I hit it real hard. So it's been about 2.5 years I've been doing the heavy fighting. And I 10 out of 10 also recommend fighting your significant other. It definitely helps a lot. And then they're talking about, so we're at a gaming convention, so we got a barbarian class, we got the dex class, and then we've got the jack of all trades class. So we kind of combine it both. So I do melees and I do tournament singles. So I get to do both of the worlds.
You're multi-class.
Multi-class, yes. Jack of all trades multi-class, 100%.
Cool. And then we had our kind of 2.5.
Yes.
What do you love about sword fighting?
What do you love about sword? So I love the opportunity to hit somebody and not get hit.
That's fair.
But you have to accept that you're gonna get hit, which is the reason why you train to be better, right?
Right.
Because then you get to hit them, they don't hit you, and it's great. But honestly, to be honest, no jokes aside, for me, it's a mental health. It helps me immensely with my anxiety, depression, and a lot of other things. I have become a much happier and healthier person since I've been able to fight, and especially getting into heavy fighting where it's a lot more intensive on the physicality. It's definitely helped me. So that's my thing.
Yeah. If I had to pick what I love about it, I would agree, honestly, being able to. So kind of going deeper into like hitting someone and not getting hit, I really like the concept of consensually fighting another person. And like we've all kind of thought about like, oh, what would I do if like I was in a situation, you know, like we all kind of have that thought. And then like you get put in a situation and like you're both having fun. It's like two dogs playing, you know, it's really just this kind of sense of community and sense of family and sense of like camaraderie and kind of sisterhood, honestly. And honestly, the experience that I've had with femmes in the sport, because the female experience is very unique, you know, so having that in this combat setting where women in our society don't often fight, like they're usually not fighting all the time. So does that make sense? I think I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but it's really like sisterhood and camaraderie and just consensually hitting each other with a sword. Nothing really brings you together like that. So
That's true.
yeah, it's great. It's really fun.
I think, so first off, both of those things are like also part of my experience, right? Being able to knock down somebody on an opposing team or run to the rescue of your own teammate and go hit somebody or pull them down. And then at the end, like the energy is pretty magical. Like we'll finish a tournament and then everybody will strip out of their armor and they'll go sit in the river and have like a magical fairy girls time. It's I mean, it sounds like really crazy, but it's something about hitting each other really brings you together in a way that it's kind of difficult to do otherwise. But the one thing that I really noticed is like my confidence is through the roof. So before I started fighting, let's say I was in a parking lot and I was coming back to my car and I saw somebody who came up and was going to ask me for money. And they were, you know, when a guy kind of looms because he thinks he's going to scare you into giving you money, as opposed to somebody who's just asking. So that doesn't work anymore. Because what are you going to do? Hit me? I've been hit a lot. And he's not going to, because he's never going to do that. I don't know, it sort of takes the fear out of some of those situations in a way that I think we don't get to experience in the normal part of the way that we're brought up. I mean, I never got into a fight with anybody. It never really came up. I mean, we were just
But I wanted
cool.
to.
There are definitely times I wanted to, yes.
Yeah, but and you never want anyone to get hurt either. And that's the beauty of our sport is we have this protective gear and like we can just have fun and not worry about injury. I mean, sometimes there's injury, but it's very rare.
But whenever I step into the list with somebody, I am never trying to injure them. I'm trying to win. And I don't think they're trying to injure me.
Right.
It's
a
not
trust.
that's not what it's about. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to explain if you haven't done it, but you should do it.
Yeah.
Should definitely do
That's
it.
the point.
Yeah.
We are about midway on our kind of outline so far, but I just wanted to open up and see if maybe anyone has like questions so far or anything. Yeah, what's up?
Where do you meet up to do this?
So we're all kind of in different locations. Personally, I'm in Irving, Texas at the Dallas School of Historical Fencing. So we meet in a indoor gym there. God bless, because it's getting hot. And with all the gear on and everything, you definitely start getting warm. But yeah, I encourage you guys to stop by sometime. We're only like 30 minutes away from here. It's really not that bad. Get some of your friends to go. Fridays we have a Femmes and Thems night, so it's LGBTQ friendly. We allow all the homies to come. People are welcome to spectate as well, you know, whatever.
What's the date and time of the practices?
Pardon?
What are you
Oh,
asking?
yeah, so we actually do them 6 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 to 9 p.m. Fridays are Femmes and Thumbs night, and then Monday, Wednesday, those are open. Tuesday, Thursday, it's 8 to 11 in the morning. You can come later if you need to. I know not everybody wants to be there at 8, but if you show up at 10, like that's totally fine. And then Saturday, it is 3 to 6. So there's actually a class going on right now. But yeah, we try to make it as like open for people as possible because, you know, time is hard. Having hobbies is hard as an adult, so, you know, I get it.
Cool. So, the women's BUHURT community, sometimes we do joint practices with the guys. And to be clear, I think ours is the only sport where we have a, like, sort of a femmes only team. And that's because it is full contact, there is grappling. If somebody outweighs you by 100 pounds, I've been in mixed melees with the guys. You know, if you ever want to feel like a pinball, the first time I ever stepped in the ring, I had a guy who was like 250 pounds, and he just like bull rushed me, and I flew back 10 feet. To be fair, I was fine, because you have protective equipment and you're fine. But, so we do mixed practice where we wear only light cloth protective gear, and we use foam weapons. So we do that also in Irving, actually at the same place that HEMA meets. So we do that, there's Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. So it's at the Warlord Combat Academy. And then Saturday mornings, we meet up at our team captain's house in her backyard. So we meet up, it's from 11 to 3, and that's in Flower Mound. So, some driving, but you know, it's worth it.
It is worth it. It's very worth it. When you're driving and you're all revved up and ready to bonk each other, it's great.
Yeah.
So the Society for Creative Anachronism, there are multiple groups, so there's multiple locations and meetups all through the week. The main one that I attend is on Tuesday nights. It's in Garland at the Lutheran Richardson. What she said. Every Tuesday from 7 to 9, and they have heavy fighting and rapier fighting and the cut and thrust, so all three. And then there's another group that meets at the Bedford Generations Park on Wednesday nights from 7 to 9. And then the other group is in Denton. They meet on Mondays from 7 to 9, and I do not remember the location, but if you're interested in it, I can get it for you. One of the big kind of differences is that the Society for Creative Anachronism does not have weight classes or gender or anything. Everybody fights together in the melees and in the tournaments. But we don't grapple, you're not body throwing people and things of that nature. So I am very much competitive, even in the melees where I'm surrounded by people. Like, you'll see pictures of melees and they'll be like, oh, you didn't go to the melee. I'm like, oh, I'm there. I'm just in the middle of that. And so I don't ever get pictures of me in melees because I'm so small, but I'm still effective in those melees and definitely competitive there and on the tournament field, even at my size with people who are, 200, 250, like just behemoths. I still am able to do that with the way our rule set is, which is kind of cool.
Cool. Do we have any more questions?
No, go right ahead.
Would we have to get our own gear, or do you guys provide gear, or like?
So we do provide gear at my school, so we have pretty much every size that you would need.
Yeah, we also have loaner equipment. We have loaner equipment at both locations where we practice. So we put people into geared practice.
Yeah, same. It's 100%. And then I think the other thing we haven't mentioned is how much, like, if you show up, or what's the running cost to doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So for the Society for Creative Activism, everything's free. None of the activities we do cost any money except for going to events. So just your practices and some of your art stuff and all like that, like all the stuff we do as a local group, those are all free. And then yes, we have full loaner gear, and we have a plethora of sizes up to the tiniest to the biggest. So that's not a problem. Really, it's just show up, bring yourself.
Yeah.
And a cup.
Yeah, and a cup. Sorry. If you have those, if you have that portion of your body that needs a cup, bring a cup. Yes.
I definitely wear
Yeah.
groin protection.
Yeah.
I
So
definitely wear
We
groin
don't need to
protection.
worry about it, but for you guys.
yes.
I don't know, I wear
So some of our sports is definitely groin protection. As a woman, a lot of people don't think about it, but so in some of our sports, it's definitely going to be required. It used to be required in the Society for Creative Activism. It no longer is. However, you can still get injured to your pelvis, even though you do not have that equipment. It is possible to get that injury. So we say you absolutely should. However, it's no longer required in our sport. But I think in yours it.
For women it is, for guys it still is.
Guys, it is, yes.
Yeah,
For women, it's not.
Anyone with external genitalia requires a cup.
That.
Yeah, I don't know that it's, I know that it's, actually that's not true. I've seen marshals do cup checks.
Oh.
Wow.
We don't do that.
Yeah. Well, so, because I didn't wear one for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I got hit on the pubic bone by a sword, and then I decided to buy one.
Yeah.
So it turns out it still hurts.
It does. I have gotten stabbed there. It is unpleasant.
And to be clear, so it's not a legal strike zone. At least in our sport, it's not. You're not supposed to hit people in the groin. However, you know, just because it's not supposed to happen doesn't mean it doesn't accidentally happen.
Yeah. I've seen some things. Awesome. Cool. Let's go ahead and go into the biggest hurdles that we've faced.
Yeah. So, did you have a question? Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
sorry.
you said you go to tournaments, do you go as like teams or do you just participate as individuals?
It depends. So, like, in the organization I'm in, there's both. So we have team melee, small unit pieces that you can fight in, and then, but our primary is single combat, and that can. It's a breadth, right? So again, jack of all trades, kind of multi-class. We don't really specialize. There's a lot out there, so you could get both in our organization. You were saying in your organization, it's all teams.
Yeah,
for the
so
women's.
you can do duels. There's not really a big focus on it. So primarily, like in Dallas, we are the Dallas Mythics, and we travel to tournaments to compete. We've gone overseas, so we're going to Mexico City for an international championship. We did Prague last year. We got silver. There were 2 English teams, so one of the English teams beat us. But we're coming back to that gold. So
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
You're gonna get it too.
So we train as a team, and we compete as teams, and we have like 8-man teams. You have 5 people in the list and a 3-person alternate that you can sub in, depending on the tournament. So, but we have more people than that. So, you know, I think we have 12 or 13 total women, but they can't necessarily all travel to individual tournaments because it turns out when you're an adult, you have to go, I don't know, work.
Yeah, so in HEMA, we generally, so it's all on an individual basis because it's all duels, but there's so much camaraderie in our school that like usually whenever someone goes to a tournament, we're all there like hyping each other up and like cornering for each other and like looking at like our guys, like all the people that are, you know, placing in the tournament and topping, and we're watching each other's scores go up. So it's definitely still that kind of team sense. It's not like a us versus them kind of thing. And even, you know, people from different schools that end up placing higher than you, like we're all friends, you know, we all kind of come together during tournaments, but it's still individual performance based as far as scoring. Cool.
What's the largest team or war? What's the largest number of combatants you would see for each organization?
Everybody's looking at me. Well, so we classify tournaments. We'll say this is a 3 versus 3 tournament where it's 3 people on the field on each team at a time, or 5 versus 5. So the biggest where it's just women that I've ever seen is like a 15 versus 15. So one thing I want to say about our sport is because our equipment is very specialized and it's very expensive, there's just a lot less fighters across the country or across the world. So the most women I've ever seen at a time was in Prague, and that was, I think, 8 teams of 8. So it was 64 women total. But we were not on the field all at the same time. We weren't all in the same list. The list is a really important part of our sport because grappling is allowed and teamwork is allowed. So a big strategy is to, for example, hold one person up against the list while another person comes and grabs the back of their head and yanks them down to the ground really fast. Or things like that, you know, so the list is required. We can't just do a rope around, like I think some of these other places. If you go to a HEMA tournament, it may just be tape on the ground.
Yeah, it's usually just tape, but without the ring.
What about a HEMA tournament?
Oh,
How many?
Do you do any like multiples, like 2-on-2s, or
No.
never?
No, well, I say never, but people like to mess around. So usually it's just something that people do for fun, but it's not like something you'll actually see in a tournament. But as far as kind of competitor counts, the most that you'll see in the United States is between either the SoCal tournament or the Oklahoma City tournament. And those are anywhere from like 120 to like 150 fighters go to those. And those are kind of the biggest in the country.
And those are, is that mixed men and women though?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are mixed men and women. Usually what you'll see at a HEMA tournament is they're all just mixed by default, and then you'll have like a women's or like URG women's tournament that's kind of like on the side during a different time. So, yeah.
So being the jack of all trades and multi-classing, we have a lot. So Penzik is our largest event, and the Penzik War has, I believe at least some have told me, but you can go out and YouTube it, type Penzik field battle, and you'll see probably about 300 on 300. So that's 600 people on the field. It's not always balanced equally, but so that is a melee. So that's an example. And then as far as like, again, we're not gendered on who does what, where, when. And so that's gonna be a mix. So I can't really tell you how many women would be on the field in the melees. And then tournament-wise, most of our tournaments are anywhere from like 20, 30 people to some of our larger tournaments are, I think Ursulmas and Candlemas end up being like 130 people show up to do those tournaments. So it does pull in like a whole lot of people, but that's because it's not specialized. There's not a whole lot of specialized equipment. There's not, it's very robust in all the different kinds of things that are going on. So it opens it up, I think, a little bit more.
280.
Huh?
280 at the roast tournament.
Oh yeah, so we the rapier tournament we just had at one of our big national events, it had 280 fencers in it, so it was quite a bit,
Yeah.
quite a lot. Wow. Yes, it was unexpected. Normally we have like close to, I think one of our biggest years was like 130, 140.
150.
So it was a little crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot. Wow. Cool. Do we have any more questions? Cool. All right, let's go into some of the biggest hurdles that we've faced in that case.
Yeah, you're looking at me like you want me to do hurdles.
I need a minute to think.
Okay, so this is a hard question, right? Because when I wanted to talk about hurdles, I wanted to give you just some idea of, as a woman showing up, what do I expect to have? So one of the hurdles that a lot of us face is in equipment. Equipment is our biggest problem, and that's because most of the people that want to do combat sports are men. Most men are bigger than women in size, and they also don't have some of the curves in the places we have curves in. And so it becomes incredibly difficult to kind of show up and be like, hey, I want to do this sport if there isn't equipment to try or to buy easily off the shelf. So I would say the biggest hurdle at least in my sport, is just equipment. And that's on the heavy side. On the rapier side, that doesn't exist. Pretty much anything that a man wears, a woman can also wear. And so it doesn't matter there, because you're not having to wear form-fitted armor like we wear on the heavy field. So I would say that is really the main hurdle you're gonna have to face. But again, we have taken great leaps and strides to make our longer gear be very inclusive of all body sizes and shapes. So we're working on that, but that I would say is the biggest hurdle.
Cool. Yeah. Honestly, the biggest hurdle that I faced probably was getting used to fighting different sized people all the time. Whether that was people of my same size, people who were taller than me, people who were shorter than me, regardless, finding out how to use the sword as an equalizer was probably the hardest part for me. I picked up really quickly on how to fight tall people, but then I fought people that were my size, and kind of backing up a little bit, I would say that it's a pretty male-dominated sport, and thus people are usually taller than me. So getting used to fighting kind of that different style, and then getting back to, oh, okay, now there's kind of femmes at the school, there's folks that are similar stature, similar size. Kind of bouncing back and forth, I guess, between just fighting different people is probably the biggest hurdle, but it's fun because that means you just fight more to kind of fix it. So, super easy.
I know we're kind of thinking about the biggest hurdle, we're thinking about getting started, but I think something that we don't talk about a lot is injury, because whenever you're fighting, or doing any sport actually, this is something I see a lot in soccer and basketball. People will come in, they'll get knee injuries, they will get shoulder injuries. I've dealt with tendinitis just from holding my sword wrong. Just from me. Nobody else did this to me. This is just me death gripping my sword while I'm trying to swing it so hard that it made the tendons in my arm inflamed, and it started hurting. And then I was like, oh, I just need to rest it a little bit. I tore my ACL. I got pregnant, which turns out not like technically an injury, but you can't fight for 9 months. Plus. Yeah. So, it is kind of really difficult to find this thing that you love and then be told that, or tell yourself that you need to sit on the sidelines for a little bit and just watch. Because getting in there, I spent a lot of time assisting in tournaments while I was pregnant, or recovering from ACL surgery, or, being like, oh, I guess I'll sit out on this time because of my arm. And I see this with a lot of my teammates too. We are so excited about something that I think it starts to be very difficult to watch other people fight and then you not be able to fight. And you kind of feel, I don't know, like a failure. Doesn't even make sense. That doesn't even make sense because you're hurt.
But yeah, both of us sitting here are like, I know I am like, yeah.
Honestly, I found it the most difficult part about fighting wasn't starting to fight, it was coming back after an injury. Because it's hard because you were at a certain point and you were feeling pretty good, and then you have to kind of back down to here and then climb all up over again.
Yeah.
A little bit.
It's true, 100%.
So anyways, that's kind of a personal thing for me, but I've noticed it a lot in my teammates as well. And I don't know if it's different because of the shared female experience, because I feel like I didn't see that in the guys, but I don't know, I don't really talk to them the same way, honestly. So
I think because I get to socialize a lot, I have to socialize with men fighters. Primarily for a long time, all my trainers, everybody I was around, everybody that fought was men. I was the only woman. And so I really had to look at what was happening to them. And for me, when I was looking at injury and how much they were training and things like that, I thought my body and my physical shape should be able to match what they were doing. And then if it didn't, then there's something wrong with me. I'm weak. It's a problem where I'm a failure. When the reality is like, I should not compare my little body and the way it works and all the issues it has with somebody like, you know, like I hate to say it, but like Magnus sitting over there, who's like, you know, he's a workout king and everything. Like, I shouldn't have to compare myself and try to meet that expectation equally, because that's just not fair. And reality is I ended up injuring myself doing that. I've never been injured fighting ever in 20 years, never. However, I have injured myself training, or like I injured myself running like you would in soccer. Like I was running, took a zig when I zagged, you know, and hurt my knee or my ankle. But actual injury from fighting has never happened. It's all been on myself, almost always overtraining, trying to meet this expectation that like I should be equal to what everybody else is doing, when really I should be doing what is right for my body and trying to find what that is. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's another hurdle too, is because there's so few femmes in really all of our respective sports, and also coming from a historical sense, because a lot of things were written by men for men, we don't know how women should move sometimes. Like the most, like,
No, it's true.
it's true though, like the most effective way to train your muscles and the most effective way to move, because we put on muscle mass differently, our bodies are just different, we have more fat in different places, and you know, I would say that was probably the hardest thing, especially also after injuries. Like I rolled my ankle one time, and I won, by the way. I hit them and I won, but I still rolled my ankle when I fell. And then I was out of fighting for 2 months, so that was cool. But yeah, so you know, same thing though, and then you're like, oh God, like I'm working with like new weird tendon regrowth because I didn't used to move this way before. So it's just a lot, I would say, as far as like an injury, coming back from that, it's like, oh my God. But you gotta come back from it because you gotta stay badass.
Yeah.
So
100%. I think also as we get injured or we overtrain or things like that, we learn from our mistakes. And then, so in my example, like I overtrained and injured my shoulder and caused so much inflammation. They thought I had torn something. I've not torn anything. It's just all inflamed because I pushed my body too hard. So since learning that, like now I coach and I'm very vocal about being careful with how much you train. You need to do stretching. Look, we should all do stretches. Here's rotator cuff stretches. Like, and especially as women, as we get older, there's actually a high increase of shoulder injury that happens to us more than men. That is a medical fact. Go look it up. I didn't know that. I had to learn that from my doctor. So as these things happen to me, I am now like counseling and coaching and talking, like even on this platform, right? Talking about like, hey, you need to look at your body and this is the things that you need to be careful with, that a lot of times men don't have to because they have all this muscle mass and everything that kind of protects their joints and don't have an issue. I mean, like Marjorie, you same thing, right? Like
on the opposite side.
Right, opposite sides. So between the both of us, we have two working shoulders right now. You know, and this is all stuff that we're having to learn because it's just that information isn't out there.
mm-hmm.
So it's been an interesting journey. I'll say that.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we can just combine all of our brains,
Yeah.
and then we'll have.
Well, that's kind of the other thing. Like that's the other thing for like starting and doing panels like this is because like my experience and the experience of people, the other women in the SCA is you know one thing, and your experience in HEMA is like strangely enough as we're talking is like, oh wow, that's very similar to my experience and Elise's experience. Like we all have incredibly similar experiences, even though we're doing very different fighting types.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Cool. Do we have any questions so far, guys? Nope. All right. How can other women get involved in your sport?
Yes, so this is the whole point of doing this panel, was also, first of all, so we can network and kind of build this community that outstretched beyond the borders of our, you know, our little areas, our organizations, but also like how do we get more women into our sport? And so I think we started 2 years ago right out of COVID. Marjorie, who's sitting right there, She is awesome. She really kind of got the ball started. I joined and lend my voice and purchasing power.
I work for a nonprofit.
And so we went in and we said, okay, how can we get more women in this sport? I want more, and so we would go to demos, and like our whole thing with the demo was, let's get another woman. That's my only goal this whole demo, and we just you and I get it. And so we realized like one of the big major things is making sure that first of all that we make it welcoming for when you show up. So you show up and you're just like, I don't know what this is, I don't know how this is going to be. We encourage you to come. You show up. If we're not welcoming, then it's a problem. So we definitely have changed to being more welcoming. Like I said, we changed our armor to where it's more inclusive. If you show up, we can put you in armor and you can try it out. But I think the biggest thing is just is putting it out there into the public that this is a thing that you could do and you could be successful at it, and it's enjoyable and it's fun, and you're not gonna build all this muscle and get too big and look like a guy if you don't want to. You know, you can be competitive in these sports and still be you and be a woman and still like when I get done fighting, I put on fancy dresses like Sarah over here, you know, so I can still be all those things. I don't have to be in armor and then be in like a bed, I don't know, or whatever. I can do that. And so that's, for me, it's encouraging these conversations, really.
Yeah, I think everything that you just said.
I'm really passionate, can you
Yes.
tell?
No, everything that you just said, but really kind of getting back to that welcoming environment. I kind of just put myself in the same spot, you know? It's hard for me to mesh into communities, to be completely honest. So coming from the perspective of not just like a woman, but like a person who maybe doesn't really know how to like kind of fit in right away, I think it's the job of the instructor and like maybe the leaders of that community to like kind of make that space and be conscientious of that space. And also I think just having like more femmes really encourages more femmes.
Strangely enough, yes.
Yeah, you see more people that are like you and that you can relate to, and you're like, okay, you know, I can do this too, right? For me, when I started HEMA, I actually kind of just watched from the sidelines in a very similar way for like 2 months. And oddly enough, rapier was my thing too. So we do rapier in HEMA, and I was like, wow, that thing's pretty. That moves cool. Sword, yeah.
That's what she wants. She wants swords.
Right. I wanted. Well, who never like picked up a stick and pretended like it was a sword, right? Like you do that from the moment that you are a toddler, you know, it's just so ingrained in us to want to swing sticks for some reason. So, you know, it's a natural kind of baseline fantasy love, and just, I think it would have been more encouraging for me right away if there were more femmes to kind of join and have that sense of community with. So I think building the community is what's gonna actually create the community, right?
The trap.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
The trap.
The trap.
Step one to
Yes.
having more women is to have more women.
That's
Yeah.
right. It's like a thing. Exactly.
I mean, it's actually true.
It's true.
It's totally true.
It's definitely been.
Yeah.
It's definitely been our experience is
Yeah.
that like Margie's like, oh, I want to fight and everything, and we got her all in and everything. I was like, oh, I'm gonna start doing heavy fighting. I started showing up, and then there was 2 of us, and we're like, okay, how do we get a third? You know?
Really,
Like,
that is how
we
it
need a third person
From Kansas.
Exactly. We import them from Kansas. Is actually what we did. No lie. That is what happened. We
Mail
actually-
order fighter.
We did. We did. So we had a fighter who was in Kansas that was in our sport. She moved to the area and was like, oh, I don't know, I was kind of unsure. And we were so excited when she showed up. I think we were too excited.
She's in my wedding now.
Yeah,
I can't leave.
So we got her here and everything, and she said that, and I wish she was here today, unfortunately, but she couldn't be here. But she said, us being there, Marjorie and I definitely have helped like her stay in the sport and want to do it. And now, we went from 1 person to 2 to 3, and now we have 10 regular female fighters every week at our practice. So it's the truth. You got 1 person who's super passionate. You convince your friend or somebody to put on armor and to show up every week, and then you get a third. They get
We're the minorities now.
Yeah, it's true. The men are actually the minorities a lot of weeks at our practice now, which is quite interesting.
Yeah,
Which is funny because our ranker side's doing the opposite, where we're getting more guys.
Yeah.
And less women in our ranker side.
It's heavy stealing all of them.
You stay over there.
We had someone who like just did art, and I was like, well, I mean, you like stabbing things with a needle. Why don't you just have a spear? And she put together a kit and came over with us. So.
And so she came together. She only wanted to do spear, and that was the whole being welcoming and letting you do. Hi, it was nice seeing you. The whole being welcoming and saying, hey, you just want to fight spear? Cool. Here's a spear. Here's your armor. We're going to teach you how to use a spear and let you have fun in the way you want to have fun. And that's what we do. And so not forcing that person into something or do a whole bunch of stuff they don't want to do, it has really helped us as well. So
Yeah, not holding people at gunpoint helps.
Yes, right. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Well, it turns out because you're so passionate about the thing that you're into, and you're like, of course I love getting bonked on the head with a big axe.
Right.
Doesn't everybody? Doesn't everybody? At least for us, we can never tell if somebody is going to love fighting until we put them in armor, and then we get them to fight, because they can be really excited about it, and then they get in, and then they have a panic attack because they have a helmet on their head, and that happens. I mean, like, not uncommon.
And sometimes people will freeze up too, because
Yes.
they'll be so fixated like on the weapon,
Yeah.
and they'll think like, oh god, I'm gonna get hit, this is gonna hurt,
Oh my gosh.
And sometimes you just gotta let yourself get hit. Like sometimes
Yeah.
you just gotta take it.
Well, so like in HEMA, they thrust, right?
Yeah.
You can thrust. That's, as a matter of fact, it's a very big, very important part of
Yeah.
HEMA is thrusting. We don't thrust in BUHURT because we have helmets with big holes in the eyes, right? Also, it turns out if you're holding somebody up against a fence and then somebody else can thrust, it becomes a much more dangerous sport that we have not geared up for.
Yeah.
So there's no thrusting. And then, but I have HEMA gear, and like the first 12 times that I ever went to fight HEMA, somebody would poke at me and be like, whoa!
Yeah.
Because I was like, why are you trying to stab me?
Yeah.
Don't you know? Don't you know that to kill me? Don't you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Well,
funny.
And also like the sports, because I've done a little bit of heavy, I've done some HEMA. It turns out that getting hit with basically anything, it still hurts, right? If you get smacked with rattan, I don't care what you're wearing. If you really get a little smack, now I mean, you're not going to go to the hospital. You might get a bruise. You'll probably be fine. You ever done lightsaber combat?
Yes.
Dude, those little lightsabers smack.
So
They hurt.
They
kind of hurt.
So they feel like getting hit with like, I akin it to getting hit with like the so you know how like in school you'd have the towel and towel and then you
It's
slap
like getting
you-
whipped.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
what it feels like getting hit with this polycarbonate tube. And it is unpleasant. And a lot of those games, they let you get hit in the hand and the ankle.
Yes.
Or something. I hit my husband in the ankle, and he hopped around and was like, "What the?" And he's cussing.
Yeah.
He's so upset about this. I hit him in the ankle. He's hopping around. I'm like, "Yeah." You know, my lightsaber's like, "Wah." Like,
and then he hits you, and then you're like,
yeah. But it was worth it for those couple of seconds.
But, I found that it's difficult to know how somebody's going to react under those circumstances. Even if you don't get like hurt, you're still going to get a little smack, right? Whenever you're fighting with steel weapons, whenever you're fighting with rattan, the way you're never going to know unless you can convince somebody to put on the armor and go for it. And it may be kind of like me, where I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I guess it seems like something I should do once. I mean, it's right there below skydiving. Let's go in. And then I went in and I was like, you mean I can hit as hard as I can? I mean, really, there's never a situation outside of like a real I don't know, like a parking lot fight where you're really supposed to hit as hard as you can. Yes, you can, because our equipment is designed to keep somebody safe during that. Not just safe, but honestly, as hard as you can may not be that hard. It turns out if you haven't trained,
It turns out you actually can't hit as hard as you think you would if you hit as hard as if you don't know what you're doing.
if you don't know what you're doing.
If you don't know what you're doing, yeah.
But it's very freeing. And then I did that, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Can I do this again? Can I pay you to let me do this all the time? How much is the equipment? Very expensive.
Yeah.
Very expensive.
So I think there is a cost associated with any hobby you get into, and so I know Elise's is probably the higher end cost of entry, as far as like getting your own armor, and then I think the schools, they both have fees.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So our school, we charge $125 a month, or it's $20 for like a drop-in fee. But you get your first month for free, so you know the first one's always free.
Yeah.
Right.
There you go.
I don't actually know how much you charge.
So I think if you go, so you don't have to go to Warlord for us to participate. You can just drop into the backyard of our team captain, and we'll just put you in loader armor, and you can just keep doing that forever. But if you do want to go to Warlord, I think it's $125 a month.
Okay.
And then, you know, if you want to, the thing about that is like, if you train in a team sport, it turns out that you never get to do the real thing that you want to do unless you go to a tournament somewhere. Because, yeah, I guess we could we could do scrimmages, we can do a couple of teams, but really, you want to go fight against another team. You want to go fight against a team in Oklahoma, or you want to go to, I don't know, New Hampshire or California. And that, I think, is actually the greatest cost associated with it, is traveling.
Yeah.
We have to price out flights and hotels and cars.
Extra
and
baggage fees.
Extra baggage fees, for sure. Fly Southwest when you can, baby.
That's
You
right.
get 2 free checked bags. And, so like my kit, I replaced a lot of it with titanium, and even then I can just barely fit everything in one bag, and it's 50 pounds. But that's not your weapons. You gotta put your weapons in another bag, and you try to get that axe, that's an oversized bag. So it can get weird. You have a whole team together, so you can, maybe one person will rent a car and they can take a bunch of the weapon. I don't know. That is the biggest part of the fee. And of course, the equipment, which may cost you $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, because you are probably under 6 foot if you're fighting in the women's team, in which case you're probably gonna have to get it all custom ordered unless you can find somebody to sell you their used stuff, but that stuff goes quick.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we don't have fees other than if you go to an event, and then there's an event one-time fee. We do have a membership in the organization, but you don't have to be a member to play. There's no pay to play for that. And then our armor and gear on the rapier side, a lot of the swords run anywhere from $250 to $800 depending upon what you're doing. A fencing mask is $100. You have gorgets and stuff like that. So all in, if you're doing rapier, you're probably going to be under $1,000. And this isn't stuff you buy all at once to do it. You have time to get little bits and pieces. So like over years, you're buying that. And then on the heavy field, it really depends. Kind of the sky is the limit. So I would say you could probably get into heavy for about $300 to $500. If you're lucky, you can find scraps and stuff. And the sky is the limit. Like I've seen some amazing historical represent craziness that was like the whole kit was done by an amazing master artist, and it was close to almost $100,000 this dude was wearing in armor. So the sky is kind of the limit when it comes to that, all the way down. But I think your thing on the travel, like our organization's international, yours is international, HEMA's international now, so, or has been for a while, I think. So the cool thing and the upside to that is that like I go on work trips, and when I go on work trips, I pack my bag, I pay an extra fee, and I get to go fight people I've never fought before on my work trip. Like, how cool is that? And then I get to go have beers and dinner with them afterwards, people I've never met before. So it's pretty amazing, you know, and we travel all over the place teaching, and like, I know do you travel and teach, or are you just in the?
I don't travel and teach often.
Yeah.
Usually I'll go and I'll kind of do something if there's like a tournament already going on, and then I'll kind of, it's unofficial.
Yeah.
But
So I know, like, I know Elise travels like a whole lot, because you have to, because there, as you said, there's not very many women's teams like all in one area, and so like at least you have to travel in order to do a lot of this stuff to get the big team tournaments, and so that can end up being, if that's something you decide you want to do, it can be a cost associated with it is travel. So, but yeah,
Very fun. I mean, it's kind of like a vacation, and I sure went from taking not very many vacations to a lot of vacations.
take a lot of vacations so we have two different kinds of vacations in my house. We have SCA vacations, which is primarily all we take. And then we have beach vacations, which were like a 3-day weekend to say that we went somewhere and didn't do SCA. Like, that's it. Yeah.
I just want to point out, there were a lot of like numbers and costs, but it seemed like the bar to entry for all three of these was pretty low, just to repeat that way. Like, people could
Yes.
show up and
Yes.
get started at a very low
Yeah.
cost.
Yes.
Bar to entry is show up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Show up, probably bring protection.
Yeah, that's right. Quarantine.
I did
Yeah.
want to note as well, if you choose to go to the Warlord facility, that 125 covers both membership into the Armored Combat for 125.
And that's way less than some of the CrossFit gyms are way more than that. So I mean, it's what you're paying. You're paying for getting a really good deal for what you're paying for, in my opinion.
So at Warlord, they have loaner gear that you can take to tournaments even. They have kind of a ridiculous amount of loaner gear there.
Yeah.
So you could be kitted out, and you could theoretically go a year or two without buying armor, although it won't fit very well. That's actually, I think, a feature and not a bug, because if your loaner gear is too comfortable, then it turns out that nobody will ever buy their own gear.
Strange how that works.
feature.
So we have just just 2-3 minutes left. Did anybody have any other questions or anything they were dying to know about? Yes, Katie.
What is the biggest personal goal that each of y'all have, like, in your respective sports?
Oh, that's good. Paige,
Oh God.
put you on the spot.
I want to get back into competing in general. I started instructing kind of full-time like 2 years ago, and that's kind of the last time that I got to really like go out there and compete. And I was killing it. I was killing the game, and I miss it. So I would say probably getting back to competing and maybe bringing home a few medals would be nice. So yeah. What about you?
I would like an international gold medal with my team. We got silver last time, which is very close to gold, but not actually gold.
Yeah.
Not quite gold. So I think that would be pretty cool.
That would be dope.
But we're all winners.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think you're winners because you put on way more than me, and you get hit with big, like, you hit each other with these. And I don't know if you've seen these, but this is what, when
that's
she's
the
talking about
longsword
it,
stuff.
this is longsword stuff, and then, like, they're hitting each other with those. So,
Ours are, yeah.
to me,
so
you go out in the
ours-
field and you do that, you're already a winner.
This is a BUHURT longsword. You can hold both of them if y'all want, but one of them is much heavier than the other because we're wearing metal and they're wearing cloth.
Yeah.
So you hit much harder.
We call them gambesons. So our gear is very similar to what you would see like fencers wear, but probably double the padding. So it's still like more cloth, kind of puncture resistant gear with fencing masks, backhand protection, all that fun stuff. The gauntlets are similar to this, but they are hard plastic instead of steel. There's a myth that the steel's going to mess up your weapon. I'm like, that doesn't make sense because it doesn't mess up your weapons. So.
Well, I mean, it does. But also, so our swords, I think, are much thicker than yours.
Yeah.
And we do have to grind out the chips every once in a while.
Yeah. I
I
think people are
Sword
doing
maintenance. You're going to learn sword maintenance.
you will learn a lot of. I now know how to put in rivets. There's all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
You get handy for sure.
Yeah.
My biggest goal is to get more women in sword fighting.
Yes.
Yeah. That's just my biggest
always
goal.
That is my, it will always be my goal. Until I believe in making it normalcy. I want normalcy in our sports where a woman shows up and it's not unique. It's not odd. It's not a one-off thing or, oh, we have to treat you special. It's, oh, okay, awesome. Here you go. Let's go. It's normal experience. It's a normal thing that happens every day. So that's what I want to see in my big goal. Yeah. The whole goal of this panel. All right, well, thank you so much, Paige and Elise, for joining me today. We're going to stick around for just a couple minutes in case you want to know how to come out and try what we do, or if you have any questions you don't want to ask like in front of everybody. And if you want to check out any of our gear, we have some helmets, we have some swords, gauntlets. I have my armor on, which I can take off. You can see how heavy it is. It's not that bad. And yeah, more than happy to talk to you about it in detail. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you guys.
Thank you, everybody.